I didn't hear you come in. No one ever does. The problem is getting out. Getting out? Yeah, getting out. Let's review the job again. Okay, August the 13th, 1:30 a.m.
Now, how do you shoot yourself as twins? Well, the editing is fairly simple, and I'll show you that. But the results depend a great deal on planning and setup. And so I'm going to spend enough time on that to take you through all of the steps. The first thing you do is simply shoot each twin. In my case, I'm playing Carlo and Tony, so I get on Carlo's side of the frame and I shoot myself as Carlo. And then I get on Tony's side of the frame and I shoot myself as Tony. I need to leave enough space between, if I'm playing Carlo, my lines, so that Tony, when he's going to say his lines, will be able to speak. And that's one of the trickiest parts, and we'll have more about that later. Then if I need some singles, I can also shoot some singles to go along with it. So I'll have both the two shots of me playing both Carlo and Tony, and then some singles of Carlo and Tony separately. The next thing is to go into the editor and use masking to put the two clips together. So I will place, for example, Tony's clip on the top track and Carlo's track immediately underneath it. Then I'll mask Tony's track so that the space where Carlo is going to be is transparent, and then Carlo appears almost as if by magic, something that's really fun to do, speaking to Tony. The two sides won't match exactly, so you can use a blurring function to kind of smooth out the interface between them. And there you've got it, playing twins. Now then, it's very difficult to coordinate the two speaking parts so that you don't wind up with jump cuts, so they just flow smoothly together. And I'll show you how to do that next. Each character must listen while the other one speaks. So at the top in red, we've got one character speaking and listening, speaking and listening. The question is, how long is he supposed to listen? And the answer to that is you just kind of have to practice it a few times to get a feel for it and make sure that you're listening long enough. Now you've got some flexibility in this because you can cut and stretch the in-between part. You can't slow down the whole clip because the sound will slow down with it. What you need to do is make a cut immediately after you stop speaking and another cut immediately before you start speaking. And then the part that's in the middle there can be stretched or compressed so that you get the timing of the speaking perfect. If you leave too little space, you're not going to be able to stretch it enough, and then you're going to have to reinsert a listening piece, and where those pieces go together, it's not going to match frame for frame, and you're going to wind up with a jump cut. So this is the basic technique of doing this, and it may take you, it'll take you several tries of practice to get it right. But when it's done right, it'll look pretty good. It's impossible to correct some shooting mistakes in editing, so plan your shots carefully and set up carefully. For this, I advised that you have a script. You should describe the scene, note any action, and you need word-for-word dialogue, which is going to be essential to timing how long the space that you leave between speaking. If you make up dialogue as you go along, you're not going to have any idea of how much space you're supposed to leave. And then if you're going to do this and you want to get into script writing or just learn more about it, of course you should read and watch the tutorials, and this applies to all the skills that you can develop. This is a formatted script. At the top is the scene heading, and then below that you've got the dialogue for each of the characters. Okay, so now you've got your script. The next thing is to frame the shot. So you'll select a background and a camera angle. Then you want to get into the frame and check your position on both sides. It's a lot better to do this if you've got some kind of an off-camera monitor, and there's lots of cheap off-camera monitors available, or you may already have one. If you don't, you're going to have to take some test shots and keep working at it until you get it right. Now, it's very important that you mark the positions and the boundaries between the characters. You can do this with tape by reference to something in the background or foreground, because you don't want the characters from one side to be lopping over into the other side. When you go to try to put those two together with the masking, it's simply not going to work. So each character has to stay on his respective side of the frame. Once you've got all this figured out and you've got your shot frame, you want to lock the camera down and never, ever move it. If you move it in the middle of the thing, the two pieces aren't going to match and you'll have a big mess. Okay, the next thing you need to do is light the scene. And you can use either what we call practical lights. These are things like chandeliers and table lamps and overhead lamps and light coming through a window and that kind of thing. And you need to practice the kind of common techniques for day and night shots, interior and exterior. And there's a ton of YouTube tutorials about this. I recommend preparing a lighting plan. I did this one in PowerPoint. It's kind of elaborate. You can jot this down on a scrap of paper. But the little suns here are my lights. So I have a chandelier. I have a table lamp. These give the appearance of it being night indoors. The light's kind of yellow, so I set my white balance so the light would look a little bit yellow. I've got two LED lights above and behind the characters that both light their hair and their faces, and this is my lighting plan. So here's my shooting plan. Again, I did this in PowerPoint. You can just jot this down on a piece of paper. Remember, when you're going to set this up, you're going to do everything. You got to act. You got to run the camera. You got to record the sound. You got to, be your own director, and it can kind of get overwhelming, and you may leave a few steps out. So the more you can plan this and refer to something that you've thought through, it'll be easier. Now you notice that I've marked the left and the right side of these characters, and the reason I did that is because I shot them like this at the table. And then I also wanted some single close-ups of them, and I didn't have enough curtain area for that, so I moved them to a different part of the room where I had a bigger curtain. Then I had to figure out where I was supposed to put the camera in relation to the characters. In the two-shot, the Carlo character had his left shoulder toward the camera. When I shoot him with a different camera position and location, I still want his left shoulder toward the camera. Why? Well, maybe in the two-shot, the side of his head that doesn't have a part is facing the camera. Now when I move him to a different location, if I don't get his left shoulder facing the camera, and instead I've got his right shoulder facing the camera, his part's going to show. And then the audience is going to say, well, here he doesn't have a part, and there he has a part. How do we get to there? You're going to have to do your own sound recording, and if you don't want to use a lavalier, which is possible, you can hide it. If you're going to use some kind of a boom mic, you'll have to set it up on a tripod and have it hang out over the characters. And you want to practice your mic placement techniques. Things to watch for is you want to make sure that the mic doesn't intrude, or the boom intrude into the shot, and also that the shadow from the mic doesn't fall across the shot. I recommend having a final checklist. You've got a lot to think about, and if you have a checklist and take the time to go through it methodically, you'll make sure you don't leave anything out. So check the lighting, the framing, exposure, white balance, focus, sound levels, everything that could affect the shoot, and make sure you've got it right before you spend a half an hour or longer shooting and then discover that the whole thing's out of focus or you didn't set the white balance. Also, make sure you check your costumes. If you're supposed to wear glasses on one side and not wear them the other side. If you've got a blue shirt on this side and a black jacket on that side. So there's nobody around to watch continuity for it, so for you, so you'll have to do it yourself. And go slow. There's no rush on this, and check each step. You'll save time in the long run if you're methodical. Acting. This can be kind of fun. You see a lot of acting from watching movies, and it's if you want to be a director and you practice acting, I think you'll learn more about how to deal with actors. On the other hand, if you want to be an actor and you learn a bit about trying to direct yourself, you'll be able to understand the directing part of it better, and may have better results when you're working with someone else. In my twins, they're supposed to be kind of identical twins, only dressed differently. But they don't have to be twins. If I, playing one side, I could wear a false beard, a hooded sweatshirt, dark glasses and never take them off, and disguise my voice, I could probably get away with playing somebody completely different. So the possibilities go way beyond playing identical twins. Then the next thing is to rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. I find when I'm shooting other people as actors, they get in front of the camera and they kind of like freeze. We get over that part of it, and then as we do more and more takes, they get more and more into the role of the character. Now I believe that if they rehearsed more, if they stood in front of a mirror and went over this over and over again, trying to develop the character, they really understood that, became that character, that they would their acting would be better, and we'd waste less time on not being able to remember the lines. So when you're doing this yourself, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, and you'll see the value of rehearsal. Self-directing is something that you probably aren't thinking about, but you're not only acting, but you should also be, another part of your brain should be standing off to the side, looking at you critically, like a director would. So you need to kind of develop also the skills of directing. You want to do multiple takes and review them as you go, and give instructions to yourself to, emphasize this, de-emphasize that, look in this direction. Anything that you can see when you watch the clip that you can tell yourself to do next time you shoot it is directing. So you can develop both the acting and the directing skills. Because you don't have any budget or time limit, you can keep shooting until you get it right. There's nothing wrong with going back and reshooting an entire scene if you don't like the way it looks, and you can tell, at the end of it, am I enthusiastic about this, or I just feel like I've finished it. I think it's probably better to do the same thing over and over again until you get something that you're really proud of, than to do a bunch of different stuff and not feel good about it. So that's pretty much it. Some of the benefits of making a one-person movie. Learn all the skills. Doesn't cost you anything. Spend as much time as you want. How to shoot yourself as twins. You shoot first one side and the other side. Combine them in the editor. And then some just general notes on all of the different skills that you're going to use on this, which are going to be script writing, cinematography, lighting, sound recording, acting, and directing. So give this a try. You can start off with a cell phone. If you like movie making, I think you can have a lot of fun with this.